this forecast video, we are forecasting a major winter storm expected mid this week, expected to bring heavy snow to millions and severe weather. All the latest details are coming right up. Alright, welcome back into another more weather forecast video. We are back in the weather room again for our second video on this big storm expected. We do have more details. Again, the storm expected mid this week. A lot of impacts are expected, so let's get straight into the forecast. So looking at the European model right now, we are going to use the European model because I do really like it. Right now we are going to look at what we're dealing with right now and what we're expecting for the next couple of days in the Northeast, as we are expecting some snow with, like I talked about in my last video on Friday, we did have that pretty small, not very significant storm that went from Kansas into Iowa, into the Ohio Valley, really in the Ohio Valley now, and is going to go into the Northeast by the time we go into later today and into tomorrow. So by the time we go in 3 p.m. today, we are going to see some snow spreading into places like northern Pennsylvania, into New York as well. By the time we go into around 9 p.m. today, we are going to really see that snow start to pick up into Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and into parts of western Massachusetts and places north of New York City in New York. As we keep going, though, into Monday, to early Monday, the storm is going to go off to the east, and by the time we go into around 3 p.m. right now, right here you can see we are going to see still some heavy snow in Maine, New Hampshire, and some backside snow in a place like Boston, but that won't add up to much. And then by the time we go into late on Monday and into Tuesday, that storm is going to be out of our hair. So let's look at what we're dealing with snow totals out of the system, what we're going to see through around Tuesday. This is through Tuesday, or through Monday actually, not Tuesday. This is through early on Tuesday. We are going to see some snow still, 2 to 3 inches maybe into Ohio. We have seen overperforming snow this morning. Early this morning we did see heavy snow, and we are still seeing that in parts of Ohio. So say Columbus towards Cleveland, maybe 2 to 3 more inches of snow. So we could have an overperforming event there in Ohio. 2 to 3, 1 to 3 probably is a good bet, inches of snow into northern Pennsylvania. And then we're expecting our biggest totals out of this snowstorm right here. Still not huge, especially for the interior Northeast, interior New England. We are expecting, again, into the interior Northeast, interior New England, from areas in New York, north of New York City, into the upstate, and into southern Vermont, central and southern New Hampshire, and into southern Maine, into the coastal areas. That's where we're expecting up to 5 to 8 inches, but I'd say a safe bet of around 6 inches to 7 inches into Maine, and then probably 4 to 6 inches from New York to Vermont and into New Hampshire. So that's what we're expecting with snow. Probably a dusting to an inch in Boston, still not expecting much snow, and New York, we're going to continue on that streak, that historic streak already of having no days without snow. We aren't going to see much snow, probably not at all any snow out of this system. This is not going to be a snowstorm for New York City, say Hartford, Providence, or Boston. This will be an interior Northeast snowstorm, and even with that, it is going to be a pretty small one, not expecting too big of impacts. Still be ready for that, though, if you're in interior Northeast and interior New England. So let's keep playing the European model out here. Now we're going to start forecasting our next storm. And now, because we have more details on this, we are going to really start to hone in on the forecast as we go into, today. We're already starting to hone in on the forecast, but especially as we go into the coming days. So by the time we go into early on Tuesday, this is around 3 a.m. on Tuesday, we do see low pressure form in Mexico. We are seeing some snow start to spread into northern Texas, into northern or southern and central Oklahoma here by the time we go into 9 a.m. on Thursday here, Tuesday here. Then as we go into later on Tuesday, so this is 3 p.m. on Tuesday, we do see this low pressure center into Louisiana, and we are seeing that wintry precip, whether it is rain, ice, sleet, or freezing rain, and snow. We are going to see a lot of that into Oklahoma, northern Texas by the time we go into later on Tuesday, into early on Wednesday. Then as we keep going into Wednesday, so by the time we go into 3 a.m. on Wednesday here, we are seeing that snow start to move into a place like St. Louis, and that wintry precip in a place like St. Louis, or in a place like southern Illinois, Indianapolis, southern Indiana, into the Ohio Valley, into the southern Midwestern regions, especially the Ohio Valley. We're probably going to start out as rain and freezing precipitation. Then we're going to switch over to snow because our temperatures with this storm are very marginal. They're not incredibly cold. We're going to be hovering around freezing in a lot of these areas, and that's why we could see not as much snow as we could see if we had that colder air in place. So by the time we go into around 3 a.m. here on Wednesday and into around 6 a.m., we are going to see that snow spreading into a place like St. Louis, into central southern Illinois, into parts of northern Indiana, as well as into Ohio and Pennsylvania. Then the storm is going to continue to move to the north by the time we go into later on Wednesday. So this is around 12 p.m. We are seeing that snow, freezing precipitation start to exit St. Louis. Some snow, but not very heavy, into Chicago by the time we go into 12 p.m. on Wednesday. Also seeing some snow into Detroit, northern Indiana, and starting to see that snow really pick up into Pennsylvania and New York, as well into mostly the interior northeast. Could we see a couple of flakes and that snow streak in New York with the system? I think it's really possible. We probably are going to see a dusting up to an inch, some snowflakes in New York. So I don't know if you'll like that. Probably most snow lovers in New York will be excited a little bit, but I mean, you're still not expecting much snow out of this. But we are going to see a warm nose of air like we do with a lot of these systems going into the northeast. So some places, a lot of the places where we're seeing snow are going to, as this warm air goes northward, they're going to switch back over to rain. So that's why we won't see big totals in parts of the coastal northeast. Then by the time we go into later on Wednesday, this is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, we are going to see still snow in Michigan, that heavy snow starting into the interior northeast, interior New England, so the upstate of New York, into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine here. And then by the time we go into around 6 a.m. on Thursday here, we're going to still see some heavy snow into Maine and into very northern New England here, and we are going to see some northwest flow around this system right here, and that's going to bring in some snow into the Appalachian Mountains here into western Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina. Also some snow along Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario here, but not expecting too much with that. And again, by the time we go into later on Thursday, this snowstorm is going to make its way on out of here with that low pressure over northern Maine. Again, this is around 3 p.m. on Thursday. Still, though, expecting some lake effect or some lake-enhanced snow, as well as into the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, as well as into the coast here, Buffalo of Lake Erie, and Watertown there with Lake Ontario. So let's look at what we're expecting with snow totals according to the European model. Again, snow totals still going to shift a little bit. We still are going to see changes, little changes, not huge changes in the track of the storm that are going to matter. But for right now, the European model, you can see from the southern plains into Oklahoma, northwestern Arkansas, southern Missouri, into Indiana, Ohio, and the interior northeast, and especially into interior New England. That's where the European model is it's expecting the biggest snow totals. I mean, we're in agreement with most of the models that's where we're expecting the snow totals, but what they aren't in agreement in is how much we're expecting in those areas. For right now, the European model compared to a lot of other models is very conservative. So let's take a look at what the GFS model is saying, and you can see we have bigger totals, much bigger totals in a place like Oklahoma, northern Texas, northwestern Arkansas, into Missouri, a place like St. Louis, southern Illinois, into Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and parts of the interior northeast and New England here. I think this is too bullish. European model is known sometimes for being a little bit too conservative. GFS model is known for sometimes being too bullish. So what should we look at to get a better idea, kind of looking at both perspectives of what we're expecting? So we are going to look at the GEFS model, and this is an ensemble model. This kind of puts a lot of models together, puts them into one, and puts out this product here. And you can see I do think this does have a pretty good handle. This is the latest run of the GEFS ensemble model, and you can see we do have heavy amounts, probably up to 5 to 8, maybe up to 12 inches here in some isolated spots into southern Oklahoma, northern Texas, into northwestern Arkansas, southern Missouri, into southern Illinois, southern and central Indiana, into places in northern Ohio, as well as central Ohio, and into the northeast as well here. Now, is this an official forecast? Absolutely not. Once we go into the coming days, we are going to get more information on this. This is the snow totals we're expecting through around Friday here. So Saturday morning, this is around the time I stopped this model here, and you can see our heavy band of snow here from the southern plains up towards the northeast. Of course, we are going to see deviations in what we're expecting with snow, and especially in a place like St. Louis or Indianapolis here, or places on the cutoff line. Let me just point these places out. A place like Little Rock as well, into a place like Oklahoma City, into Tulsa, Oklahoma. Places like those cities, it's going to be a hard forecast because some of those places are kind of on that cutoff line where south of them or north of them we could see heavier snow. So it's going to be a hard forecast. But for right now, I do think the GEFS has a pretty good handle. I think we could see some some heavier totals though into the interior northeast and to interior New England. But I do think the GEFS ensemble, I think this is a pretty good model. But again, stay tuned for these forecasts. The forecast is going to change a little bit. Exact amounts we don't know yet. So stay tuned for these updates as I will be providing those more set in stone, more concrete forecasts by the time we go into the coming days. This just gives a general idea of where we could see that heavy snow, and I think the GEFS has a good handle on this, but there still, again, will be changes into the forecast as we continue to go into the coming days. So, again, we're expecting winter weather with this storm. That's going to be the main thing we're expecting with this. But also another aspect, although it is a smaller aspect, is severe weather with this storm. And as you can see, for Tuesday, we do have a slight risk of severe weather from New Orleans into southern Mississippi and into central and southern Alabama into the panhandle of Florida as well here. You can see this includes cities like New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, or maybe a little bit south of there, and the places south of Birmingham, into a place like Pensacola, Gulf Shores, Alabama, as well as, say, Biloxi, Mississippi. So some pretty good population centers are in here. Of course, a slight risk isn't incredible, but we still need to take all of these risks seriously. So let's look at the NAM model to time this out. This isn't the best resolution. We will get better resolution as we go into the coming days, but with this model, the NAM model, we'll get a general idea of what to expect. So by the time we go into around noon, this is noon on Tuesday, we do see a line of storms start to form into Texas, going through Houston, into Dallas and Houston by the time we go into Tuesday afternoon here. Then as we go into Wednesday here, we are going to see, or into later on Tuesday, so this is 6 on Tuesday, we're going into early Wednesday, we are going to see this line of storms start to really go through Louisiana, exiting Texas. Then by the time we go into late on Tuesday night into early on Wednesday, we are going to see this line of storms go into parts of Louisiana and Mississippi here as well. And then by the time we go into later or early here on Thursday here, we are going to see this line of storms really start to weaken off by the time it goes into eastern Mississippi and into Alabama. Main threat here will be damaging winds. Isolated tornado threat will be there. Overall, though, not a big severe weather threat. I think isolated tornadoes, though, will be an issue we have to pay attention to, as well as damaging winds, since this is going to be a line of storms. So that about wraps up this more weather forecast video. Again, major winter storm expected, big snow totals. Still, though, changes are going to be in the forecast, so make sure you stay tuned for these updates. Severe weather, we are expecting that as well, but mainly snow. I will keep you updated on this, so make sure you subscribe and go follow me on Twitter. As always, stay prepared out there, and I will see you soon with more.